Rampages were a brand new tower defense minigame introduced in the base game of Monster Hunter Rise. They drove the plot of the main story, introduced new Apex variant monsters, and you could use the rewards you gathered from Rampages to craft unique, customizable weapons. Despite this, most people just didn't like the feature. Join me as we take a look back at the mechanic and get to the bottom of why it failed. It's March 2021 and Capcom can tease a tower defense game mode for Rise, which was set to release weeks later. I had absolutely no idea what to think at the time other than, well, okay, cool, we get a new minigame to pass the time. But it ended up being more than that. In fact, it was kind of the driving force of the game. We followed the story of Kimura, a village at threat of succumbing to the Rampage, a mysterious event where hordes of monsters attack the village gates in droves. We're led to believe Magnamalo, the cover monster, to be responsible. Sure enough, we take him down and it turns out Ibushi and Nawa were the ones responsible. But that's a story for another day. What is key to note, however, is that we didn't get the end of Base Rise's story until subsequent title updates months later. There's a lot in between these 2 points, so let's dive in. First and foremost, just so we're on the same page, you might be asking, what are Rampages? A super quick explanation is that waves of monsters spawn in with the goal of destroying your gate at the end. To stop this from happening, you can set up a bunch of weaponry around the battlefield, spawn in NPCs with ultimate moves, and with the sound of the counter signal, you can dive in to deal heavy damage with your weapon. At the end, a final boss will spawn in, defeat that and you'll complete the quest. You get ranked based on your performance and get more rewards the better you did. Before I go headfirst with my opinion on why they didn't work, I appreciate that many players did enjoy the feature, and that's perfectly a-okay. If you do disagree with any of my takes, let's have a civil discussion in the comment section, or in my Discord server linked below. Okay, my main reason as to why I don't think Rampages worked simply boils down to the fact that it took the player away from the thing that makes Rise such an incredible game, the combat. Rampages of course have a heavy reliance on the use of hunting installations like ballistas and cannons. This means the player is only on the ground fighting for maybe 20% of the quest at an estimate. When the counter signal is fired, you of course gain bonus damage with your primary weapon, but this only typically happens towards the end of each wave or at the cost of a long cooldown if you choose to activate it manually. The first couple times you do a rampage, it's a fun change of pace from the standard hunt format. However, for me at least, they got quite boring quite fast. Switch release Rise players will know all too well just how much endgame content was lacking. You really had two options: hunt standard monsters for the sake of doing it, or do a rampage to fight Ibushi or one of the Apexes, as that was the only way you could hunt them on launch. This gave the minigame a purpose as such. It broke up monotonous gameplay and allowed you to experience these unique encounters that were otherwise impossible. But that changed. In subsequent updates, Capcom allowed us to hunt these elusive monsters in a regular hunt format. You no longer needed to wait and hoped they appeared in rampages. You could just go straight up fight them and not bother with the 10 to 15 minute tower defense process prior to them showing up. If you didn't play Rise until PC release, you likely wouldn't have known this. After all, the original launch of Rise on Switch was, bluntly speaking, unfinished. Later versions of the game were in a much better state content wise, but I'm also sure that this made Rampages feel even more out of place when PC players finally got their hands on the game. Okay, so why else might a player engage with the feature? Well, one factor was Rampage weapons. Only through utilising materials dropped within Rampages could you craft these unique, customisable weapons. In theory, these pieces of equipment could be tailored to a player's preference, so this is a great reason to go farm some Rampages, right? Well, here's the thing. A lot of them simply just weren't meta, or at least there were much better options to use in replacement of them. Some of the Rampage weapons were actually really good, like the bow for example, but they didn't exactly take a long time to farm out, you know? A few hours of grinding and you were done. So even if you did opt to use a Rampage weapon, you wouldn't have to spend much time in Rampages to get them. The other reason many players engaged with the mechanic was XP. These quests gave a lot of progress towards your hunter rank. However, Rampages aren't exactly a fast process. Players bothered enough to farm XP in the first place with just killing Nawa or Rajang on loop, as they gave a similar XP, but in a fraction of the time. And again, I'd like to mention, we didn't even have a reason to grind for Master Rank. We were capped at Master Rank 20 until Chameleos and the other Elder Dragons were released in Update 2.0. and at that point, players were now just farming those monsters to grind instead. Furthermore, this update was the introduction of Apex monsters appearing in regular quests, so it was a sign of what was to come, you know? By the time Update 3.0 launched, we no longer had an incentive pulling us into doing rampages outside of players simply wanting to do one for fun. And again, just to clarify, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, then of course Sunbreak rolled in and we discovered the system had been completely scrapped, left in the dust and locked away as a low/high rank activity and not updated for master rank content. This ultimately means Capcom understood and likely observed from data that players in majority just didn't like the game mode. So why would you waste time throwing it into the expansion just for it to fail again? And this of course leaves us with multiple questions. I mean, what was the intention of introducing Rampages, and were they a test for future installments of the Monster Hunter franchise? Well, if we look at this logically, are we safe to assume that Rampages are simply an evolution of the siege type quests from Monster Hunter World? When I say siege quests, I'm referring to things like Zora Magdaros and the hub Korv Taroth quest. After all, they follow a similar concept, right? Use siege equipment to chip away at a monster that's pushing through your defences. Players didn't respond to these quests very well either, but maybe Capcom liked the premise of the idea and tried to convert it into a more engaging mechanic. And to that extent, they did a good job. Switching out siege equipment on the fly, ultimate NPC moves, and actual hunter combat embedded in the quest were truly an improvement to the system we saw in World. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. Let's be honest, I don't think the team could have done any better with Rampages. I personally see this as a final test for an interesting idea that just didn't work out. On that train of thought, my personal guess is we won't see anything like this tower defense minigame ever again. That is, unless we get a spin-off mobile game or a gimmicky Palico type feature. With that being said, I don't think we should look back on all this in a negative light. Personally, I really appreciate how the Monster Hunter team went out of their way to explore new potentials for the series. Innovation must be a difficult thing to achieve in a franchise with such staple gameplay. Moving away from the classic hunter versus monster is impossible, and as a result, to keep things fresh, new mechanics have to be crammed into the strict confinements that already exist. Sometimes this works, other times it doesn't. Either way, Monster Hunter takes the findings and moves forward better than ever. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think there was a way Rampages could have worked out? Or do you think they were always doomed to be more of a gimmick? At the time of this video's upload, we're now only 2 months away from the release of Monster Hunter Wilds, which is crazy to say out loud. In a similar vein to the concepts discussed today, I'm really looking forward to see what learnings Capcom are going to take from World and Rise moving forward into Wilds. Of course, we've already had a little bit of a taste of this with things such as the wound system evolving from the Clutch Claw. But who knows how much more we have left to be revealed. Short side note as well before we wrap up, I just want to thank you all so much for 2,000 subscribers. I saw this as a crazy high goal that I didn't think I could actually reach. But within this last month, there's been a huge influx of you guys joining the channel, so thank you so much. If you made it this far into the video, leave a comment naming your favourite Apex monster. If you didn't play Rise, maybe just have a quick Google and pick one at random. But with all that being said, thanks for watching.